you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. As you can see, I'm walking around the town. Trying out my new iPhone 11. A little behind in the times, but I do have one now. And I have Connie with us, and we're going to discuss a quick story that I think is very important. It deals with manipulation, and it's a story where Connie almost found herself in a situation where she was being taken down the wrong path. And the reason why... either you dance or you get annoyed, so I did a little bit of a that's the only move I got. What's good about Connie's story is, to me, it explains the process, and that's the key. So when we talk about manipulation, I want people to realize that it goes beyond the individual. It deals with the situation, how something's been created, and then how we react to that. So I think Connie's story is spot on, the exact story that I'm looking for, and also complements the book that I have coming out on the market. Connie, you mind introducing yourself again to our audience? You published author, soon to be.
Hello, everyone. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host for The Fly Behind the Wall and soon to be published author, effective October 30th, 2020, for The Cage Was Her Cocoon. It's a journey from prison administrator to entrepreneur.
I'm going to tell you something, guys. This book is going to be phenomenal. It talks about just overcoming the struggle. It's a very positive book, but it's just something that really is very intimate. It's like an intimate understanding of Connie and her wonderful journey, not even just in corrections, but just in life. And there's just so much that book has to offer. So I can't wait for the public to get their hands on that. Now, when we come back, guys, we're going to share Connie's story. Again, it's a story of vulnerability. It's a story that shows that it can happen, and that's the key. I just want people to know that the game of manipulation is not a simple game. It's a game that's very complex. And I think that the more we're able to get people to share these type of stories, is the more it gives the proper mindset when we go behind the wall. It's more than the outcome, guys. It's the process. All right, guys, stand by for our sponsor.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. And we are back. That was I just realized something. I forgot to tell people to subscribe to Tier Talk, a whole mess of things there. But that's how important your story is. I want to get to this story right away. So, Connie, do you mind sharing your story a bit?
Sure. So, as you all know by now, I was an administrator, health services administrator. And essentially what happened was there was an offender who had to make the decision to end her baby's life. Her baby was born with a rare blood disease. And so it was a difficult time for everybody. Ultimately, I did approve the decision of having her treating social worker actually go with her to the hospital because we knew that the decision would be a tough one. And we really had some concerns about suicidality. And so that's what we did. So that's the first thing that we did that we wouldn't normally do in a situation, because most hospitals have their own grievance staff, they have their chaplains, they have people to provide support to the population. However, because this was her treating social worker, we made a special accommodation. Fast forward, she makes a decision, she gets back to the facility, and we're doing a significant amount of interdisciplinary team meetings about her, just because we want to make sure everyone on the team is on the same page. Ultimately, we come up with a great plan, and we kind of just got eyes on her, just because we know the situation of, losing a child, being away from family, being incarcerated for the first time. Those are definitely the recipes for someone with who would be at a high suicide risk. I started to receive letters from her, though, pretty much saying she realized that I was someone who was supportive of her, thanking me for being supportive. And I mean, one letter would suffice, but she sent more than one letter of thanks for my role in approving the social worker. And I was like, okay, well, that's nice. That's thoughtful. I mean, I think I just felt really bad for her situation, being a mom myself. But then the 1-2 letters turned into letters of other concerns. Like, one letter was relative to, her cellmate crying. Her cellmate being upset with her crying. And so she was asking essentially if I could help with her getting a new roommate or a new cellmate, or even having her move to another area. And then she had another request that came in, asking for a double mattress. And then there was another request that came in asking for now a work assignment change or work detail. And, I think at first I was really just in this space of, anything that we could help that would help her situation be less hard for her to manage mentally, by all means. So talking with custody about the cell change, because that did still have some relationship to, the grieving process and being able to grieve without feeling threatened. And then even the double mattress, there was no true medical clinical indication, but it was still in my wheelhouse to give an approval. We'll have her assessed to see if there are any pain management issues. But then when it came to the work detail, that was a little more like, I don't know about that one. But I mean, along the way, here I am trying to be helpful, thinking that I'm trying to alleviate some of the distress that this inmate was in, not realizing that her requests were progressing, right? The thank you, but now can you do something else for me? You were so helpful. Can you do something else for me? And now this third request, which wasn't really in my control, I had to reach out to custody to really get my clinic captain to kind of buy in and help me out. There came a point where I was like, why are you doing this? Would you do this for any other inmate? And this really has nothing to do with her grieving. It was at that point that I realized, okay, I'm being taken for a ride and I need to get off the train. So that's my story.
Yeah, and obviously, most likely this female is utilizing her connection to you because she's looking for comfort. She's looking for some level of control. I mean, who knows what the end game could have been? Maybe it's just to make her time just a little bit more comfortable. I'm not going to say all outcomes lead to contraband or a threat, but technically it is pulling you out of your prescribed role, so you no longer treat the inmate in a fair and consistent manner. Now, what I like about your story, and the reason why to me it's so important, is because you realize that there's a conflict, and the conflict comes into play, I believe, when you start to feel that there are things that she's requesting that's out of your control, and now you have to get somebody else involved. And I believe that when you start to realize that I have to pull somebody else in, you become hesitant. And then you kind of like, why am I hesitant over this? What is it that I'm doing that's making me hesitant? So am I right with the conflict?
So yeah, the conflict was significant. I think, you know, the thank yous was one thing. I think when my secretary asked, like, so I had gotten 2 letters, and she's like, what's she writing you again for? Even that was like, you're right. What is she writing me again for, right? Thank you is more than enough. You said thank you once, but now, like, to get like multiple letters after. And I think after she saw that the first request was granted, which was getting her moved, she probably thought that was the signal, like, this person's on my side, they're going to help me out. But I think because, you know, being an administrator, you've got a ton of leverage, right? People are really willing to work with you because of the authority inherent in your title. And when it came to something that was solely a custody function, which was like a work detail that had nothing to do with medical at all, and I thought about, am I really going to my captain for this? And now, you know, my captain was going to work with me anyway because we've got a great rapport. And he knows I'm not going to just randomly try to, like, that's just not who I am. So he was willing to work with me. And, you know, I think in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to get myself jammed up. I don't want to get my captain jammed up. We are essentially going to be setting some sort of precedence or an expectation with the inmates. Like, because how many more of these requests are he and I going to either get now that we start accommodating for one inmate?
Right. And I think that's why it's very important. I mean, I would say on all levels, but definitely at that highest level, to ask yourself, why am I being asked this, or why am I doing this? Because again, especially at the highest level, you have the authority to do a lot. So therefore, people may not necessarily ask you why. You know, you get those questions when you're on the front line because people are over you. But when you're at that top, you know, you're in that trusted position, some people may not feel they have to ask you why, especially if the request from, as I said, this inmate is still somehow connected to what the original concern is. She never really deviated off. You were able also in your mind to justify how these concerns that she has connects with her original concern, which was something that you felt did fall into your realm. And the funny thing is, it's sympathy. I mean, who couldn't relate to what she went through? You know, who couldn't relate through that? You know, you being a mother, you also being a medical, but you're in a profession that you want to help. You know, you want to help. That's what defines what you do. And in this world, sometimes, you know, that definition of what we do, that want to help, can easily be misused by manipulative inmate. And what was so smart about this was that she created a level of sympathy. The situation itself did. Now, I'm not going to say that this is where, guys, I really want you to pay attention to this. I'm not going to say Connie, that she pushed Connie to be sympathetic. I think Connie's situations in life automatically drew sympathy instead of empathy. And then what this inmate was able to do was connect these little concerns, you know, to whatever that original concern was that Connie was sympathetic to. And then eventually, you know, even though they're veering off just slightly, there's just a little hint of truth in that. And you know what's funny, Connie, if I may ask you, even if she did ask for something, I think if you're being taken down this path, you're going to find a way to connect it to that original concern, correct?
Yeah, I think that when you really want to be helpful, that you try to make sure that this is in line with what is justifiable, right? Like, okay, so we have this mental health concern for this patient, right? And so the fact that I'm seeing her as a patient in this context, as opposed to seeing her as an inmate, I think certainly does kind of shift things a little bit. So now I'm seeing her as this patient who has a mental health need, and how are all these things possibly connected to that mental health need that we are focused in on? And when it comes to the point where I can finally disconnect, right? So I feel like that last request, I mean, even requests prior, were not connected. So like the mattress was not connected to the mental health situation. That was connected more to a comfort thing, you know, or maybe that was the manipulation, right? Because I think about it as, why would I ask the administrator for another mattress? There is a process through which I go through custody. They set me up with medical. There's a process. So the fact that I now have this connection to the administrator, I'm going to leverage that connection and try to get the other things that I want. And it didn't originally connect in that way, you know? And so, yes, I do think that there was this way I was still connecting the request to the original situation.
Right. Now, also, what's great about this, as you're telling the story, you also said that she gave you a few thank you notes. Whoop, hold on. Hold on, that's a pit bull. You know, let me just go the other way there. Hold on. I don't know if you heard the dog barking there, but yeah, I don't see a leash either. So let's just walk this way. Wait, hold on, man. All right. So, sorry, guys. I'm looking at my neighborhood for the first time. Didn't know they had a dog, actually. So the thing is, maybe that first thank you was a test to see how you respond. And then the second thank you kind of takes you further down the road. How would you, when you got that first thank you, how did you respond? And do you think there could have been a different way you did that?
So with the first thank you, I didn't respond at all because I was like, this is weird. Like, I've never had an inmate send me a letter to say thank you. And I thought that there was something odd about it. And so when she wrote the second thank you, I felt more compelled to respond because I thought that the second thank you came because I didn't acknowledge the first thank you, right? And so, you know, I think we've talked about many times that, you know, the population just doesn't think the way we think. So here I am thinking I'm being rude by not saying you're welcome, right? Or not saying no worries, it's part of my part of my job. I just want to make sure you're okay. Like, I think there's a way that I could have responded the first time, but I didn't. And then when I got the second one, that's when I kind of gave the response like, you know, no worries, you know, this is part of my role. I just hope that you're okay.
Right. And I thought when we've discussed your story on a few other channels, and I thought, since on my channel we may go a little bit longer, I thought that was good about is to address the first thank you, to see, you know, if there could have been a response. And the funny thing is that sometimes when people don't realize, it's hard not to respond to that because it's socially not acceptable. You know, basically, we want to respond to that. Someone says thank you, we want to say you're welcome, but working with inmates, it could be a very strategic thank you. You know, and based on how you respond could be what opens up the door to that next thank you. And then obviously the small favors. Real quick, so as the game progressed from the beginning to the end, right, what percentage would you say is on you and what percentage is on the inmate as the game progresses?
So as the game progresses, I think that so I feel like I should take full ownership for the entire situation. But I know that, you know, the inmate was presented with an opportunity. And in that opportunity, I feel like she was upping the ante, right? And as she upped the ante, even I honestly think about like when it was the mattress, right? Even though it could have technically still fell into the wheelhouse, I think the cellmate changed because she was grieving the whole mental health process and feeling threatened, just going through her grief process, crying at night or what have you. You know, I don't think that was like a thing that I could have ignored or redirected. But I do believe that the mattress, I do believe that, you know, the work detail, like those were really all on that inmate trying to now push the process. And I'm glad that, you know, I had some stroke, my aha moment where I was like, no, enough is enough.
I want people to notice that they saw me kind of going a little out of breath. I do live on a hill and I have asthma. So I live on a huge hill, guys. So I was walking up the hill. It took a little bit of energy from me. But with that said, Connie, as we progress to the end, obviously we're going to come to a close. I want people to know that when you're getting played, you have to really kind of recognize those feelings that are inside you that says something is not right. I think what was great about you is that once you realize that, because this is just who you are, once you realize that her request could have involved someone else, that's when you took a second to think, like, why am I hesitant? Why is this not just a simple request to bring up? Now you're not even concerned about yourself. You're concerned about the other person. So because you're like, well, maybe I'm doing, I don't know, let me figure it out. But until I can figure it out, I'm not going to get anybody else involved. So I just want to mention the feeling of conflict. I know how you mentioned that, okay, the subtle request and how I felt about it, but eventually by bringing somebody in, how would you tell somebody like, okay, this is what you got to recognize in yourself? Is there an inconsistency between what you're doing and how you feel about what you're doing?
Absolutely. So, I think the moment that I decided I was going to call the captain was really my moment of clarity. Like, I sat down and I was like, why is this something that you're thinking twice about? And I had to ask myself that question. I had to figure out, was this something I would do for any other inmate who wrote to me? Or would I have already redirected them? And the fact that I was calling in the captain, who I knew would be like, all right, Connie, what you want us to do, right? I was like, I don't want to get him in something where I'm even feeling uncomfortable with the decision. So if I had to say anything to anyone, it would be to just don't ignore that gut feeling that's speaking to you along the way, because that is the conflict. If you don't have to think twice about it, it's because it's part of your everyday routine and it's nothing that you wouldn't normally do. It's when you start veering off from the things that you would normally do that you have to think about and you have to process and you have to check yourself, that usually that is not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Connie, your story is so perfect with what I'm trying to push out there, because the story really is, yes, it's about the individual, but it's about how the individual reacts to a situation that they're presented with and how the sympathy, the conflict, and all this stuff comes into play. And I really do think it's essential that people get an understanding of this story, because at no point are you coming in with the intent to do something wrong.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of you're put into a situation and how you react to that situation. But again, you have tremendous insight, tremendous situational awareness. So it didn't elevate that far, And again, guys, it's not always going to be the extreme outcome that's going to wake you up. Sometimes the outcome may not even be extreme, but it could deal with them being treated a little bit inconsistent. And what I mean by that is inconsistent to others, a level of favoritism, which by all means we cannot have in the prison system. Besides the fact that it leads to other things, believe it or not, it could also put that inmate in harm, because that inmate is now getting things that the other inmate population would also like to have. So, Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say that intention is just that. You could have the best of intentions, but the reality is that you don't want to end up compromising yourself because your intentions do not align with the consistency that, folks would expect from you.
Yeah, and Connie, thanks again for sharing it, because this is the kind of story that really does identify the process, breaks away from the outcome, and really kind of gets to the point of what I want from my book. So as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Guys, I may be distracted. Connie just decided to give me a house tour. Yeah, just a random house tour just now. As always, guys, take care and stay safe.
Whoa.